Kwame had always been proud of who he was. After spending 5 years working in the city, he came back to his village, a hankro, walking tall and confident. People gathered around him, admiring his new clothes, his wristwatch, and the way he spoke English mixed with local slang. The villagers whispered that the city had changed him. His mother, Nana Abina, was filled with joy to see her only son return home. She had already chosen a wife for him, a young woman named Amma. Amma was gentle, polite, and hardworking. She helped her mother on the cocoa farm every morning and sold roasted plantains by the roadside in the afternoon. Everyone in the village respected her for her kindness and honesty. When she smiled, people said her heart showed through her eyes. Nana Abina believed Amma would make the perfect wife for her son. One evening she said to Kwame, "My son, now that you are back, it is time to build a home. Amma is a good woman. Her parents are honorable and her hands are blessed. She will stand beside you in both sunshine and rain." Kwame nodded, pretending to agree. "Yes, Ma," he said, though in his heart he felt Amma was too simple. He remembered the stylish women in the city, women who wore perfume that lingered in the air and spoke with confidence. Amma, with her plain dress and quiet voice, seemed old-fashioned to him. A few days later, Nana Abina invited Amma and her family for a small meeting. The elders sat under the mango tree, drinking palm wine as the two families discussed the marriage. Amma's parents smiled proudly, and Amma herself sat quietly with her head bowed, her heart beating fast. She had admired Kwame since childhood. He was handsome and hardworking, and she believed she could make him happy. When Kwame entered the compound, everyone stood. He greeted the elders and sat beside his mother. For a moment his eyes met Amma's. She gave a small smile, shy but full of hope. Kwame looked away quickly. The elders began to speak of bride price, wedding plans, and blessings. But before they could finish, Kwame cleared his throat and stood up. "I have something to say," he announced. The courtyard fell silent. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. "I respect everyone here," he continued, "but I cannot marry Amma." His mother's face froze. "Kwame, what are you saying?" she asked softly. Kwame took a deep breath. "I have lived in the city. I have seen the world. Amma is a good woman, but she is not for me. I need someone who matches my life, someone modern, someone who can walk beside me in the new world I've seen." The elders exchanged shocked glances. Amma's parents sat speechless, their joy turning into confusion. Amma's heart sank. She looked at Kwame, her eyes wide and filled with pain. She wanted to speak, but no words came. Nana Abina stood, her voice trembling with anger. "Kwame, do you hear yourself? A man's pride should not blind his eyes. This girl you shame today may be the one you need tomorrow." But Kwame had already made up his mind. "I am sorry, Ma," he said coldly. "I cannot marry her." The meeting ended in silence. The elders shook their heads and left slowly, disappointed. Amma stood up quietly, bowed to Nana Abina and said softly, "Mama, thank you for thinking I was worthy. I wish your son peace." Her voice did not shake, even though her heart felt broken inside. She walked out of the courtyard with her head high, her steps steady. The villagers watched her go, whispering among themselves. Some pitied her, others admired her courage. That evening, as the sun set behind the cocoa trees, Amma sat by the river. The tears she had held back finally fell. She asked herself what she had done wrong. She had never been proud or lazy. She had never spoken rudely. Why had Kwame rejected her so easily? In the distance, the sound of drums rose from the village square. News had already spread that Kwame, the city man, had refused Amma before the elders. Some laughed, some gossiped, and others shook their heads. But Amma remained quiet. She knew that life would move on, even if her heart was aching. Meanwhile, Kwame walked through the village that night with pride. He met his friends and boasted, "I cannot marry a girl who doesn't know city ways. I need a woman who fits my future." His friends nodded, some agreeing, some too afraid to say otherwise. A week later, Kwame met Ife, a woman from the nearby town. She had smooth skin, bright clothes, and a way of speaking that made him feel important. She laughed at his jokes and called him, "City Man." Her perfume filled the air wherever she went. Within days, Kwame became enchanted by her beauty and charm. He brought her gifts and showed her his cocoa farm. She smiled sweetly and said, "You deserve better than a village girl." Those words filled Kwame's heart with pride. He began to believe rejecting Amma was the right thing to do. But Nana Abina watched quietly. She knew the difference between appearance and character. One evening she said to her son, "My child, beauty can fade but goodness remains. Ife's laughter is loud, but does she know how to share your burdens?" Kwame only laughed. Ma, you don't understand. Times have changed. Amma meanwhile returned to her daily work. She focused on her farm, caring for her cocoa trees and helping her mother. Each morning she prayed for strength. Though her heart still hurt, she refused to let bitterness grow inside her. If he cannot see my worth, she told herself, then I must prove it through my deeds. In the months that followed, Amma's hard work began to pay off. Her small cocoa farm produced more beans than before. Traders began buying from her directly. She saved her money, helped others in need, and earned respect from everyone around her. Kwame sometimes saw her in the market. She no longer looked sad, her eyes carried peace and quiet confidence. He noticed but turned away quickly, refusing to admit that her calmness unsettled him. In the village, people began to whisper, Amma's hands are blessed. Even the land listens to her heart. But Kwame, blinded by pride and the sweet words of Ife, continued down his path, not knowing that his choice that day would soon lead him to deep regret. That day under the mango tree would forever remain in Amma's memory, not as the day she was rejected, but as the day she discovered her strength. She learned that dignity speaks louder than anger, and silence carries its own power. As the moon rose that night, Amma looked up at the stars and whispered, one day he will understand what he threw away. And though her voice was soft, the wind carried her words far across the cocoa fields, as if the earth itself wanted to remember her promise. Kwame married Ife in a grand wedding that the whole village talked about for weeks. Drummers played, dancers twirled, and guests filled the courtyard, eating jollof rice and roasted meat. Kwame felt proud. He believed he had chosen the perfect wife, beautiful, confident, and full of city charm. As he looked at her shining dress and polished nails, he told himself, Amma could never have looked this fine. At first, life with Ife felt exciting. She called him my city man, and praised him in front of others. She liked to go out, buy new clothes and take pictures with her friends. Kwame enjoyed the attention. People in the village admired them. They were seen as a modern couple, different from the rest. But as days turned into months, the sweetness began to fade. Ife started to complain about everything, the small house, the dusty roads, even the village people. Kwame, she said one morning, I can't live like this. There's no fun here. You promised me a better life. Kwame sighed. Ife, I am trying. The farm needs time. Cocoa doesn't grow in one day. Ife rolled her eyes. Maybe if you spent less time with your mother and more time making money, things would move faster. That sentence cut Kwame deeply. His mother, Nana Abina, had worked all her life to raise him. She loved him dearly and still helped on the farm. But Ife never respected her. She refused to eat Nana Abina's food and called her an old villager. At first, Kwame tried to defend his wife, asking his mother to be patient. But over time, even he began to see that Ife's beauty was only on the surface. She was never satisfied. Every week she wanted new dresses, new shoes, and new jewelry. When Kwame refused, she would shout and cry until he gave in. Slowly, his money began to disappear. His cocoa business started to suffer because he spent more time trying to please Ife than working on his farm. He sold his best goats to buy her perfume and paid for her trips to the city. The workers on his farm left because he could no longer pay them on time. One night, Nana Abina came to him with tears in her eyes. My son, she said, you are losing everything. Listen to me before it is too late. Kwame frowned. Ma, please. Ife just wants a better life. I will manage. But his mother shook her head. A woman who cannot live with patience will destroy a man's peace. Kwame stayed silent. Deep down he knew she was right, but pride would not let him admit it. Meanwhile, Amma was building a new life of her own. She worked from sunrise to sunset, drying cocoa beans and selling them to traders. At first it was hard, but she never gave up. People began to notice her determination. Some of the village women joined her, and together they built a small business. They called it Amma's Gold Cocoa. Every month her business grew. She saved enough to buy her own storage shed and even helped others who were struggling. The villagers respected her for her kindness and strength. When people talked about her, they said, Amma's heart is clean. That is why her hands bring success. She never spoke badly about Kwame. When his name came up, she only said, I wish him well. But in her heart, she had long moved on. Her pain had turned into wisdom. Back in Kwame's house, the situation worsened. Ife no longer pretended to care about him. She stopped cooking, stopped helping, and spent most of her days gossiping with friends or traveling to nearby towns. When money ran short, she blamed him. You used to be somebody, she said coldly. Now look at you, just a poor farmer. Kwame's pride began to crumble. He tried everything to please her again. He borrowed money from friends, sold his last goat, and even pawned his mother's old necklace. But Ife's demands never ended. One rainy afternoon she packed her clothes into a bag. "Where are you going?" Kwame asked, panic in his voice. "I'm leaving," she said simply. "I can't live this poor life anymore. There's nothing here for me." Kwame stood frozen. "Ife, please, we can fix this." But Ife laughed. "You can't fix what you broke when you chose to stay small." And with that she walked out into the rain, never looking back. Days passed and Kwame's house grew silent. The laughter, the noise, even the arguments, all gone. Only the sound of raindrops and his mother's quiet prayers filled the rooms. When he went to the market, people whispered, "That's Kwame." His city wife left him. He tried to ignore them, but each word felt like a stone hitting his chest. One evening he sat outside his empty house, watching the sky turn orange. His mother brought him a bowl of soup and sat beside him. "My son," she said softly, "now you see that beauty cannot cook and pride cannot feed the hungry." Kwame bowed his head. "You were right, Ma. I thought I knew everything. I thought I was better than the people here. Now I have nothing." Nana Abina touched his shoulder gently. "You still have life. And life gives chances to learn." That night Kwame couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Amma, her calm eyes, her quiet strength, the way she used to smile without showing off. He remembered how he had rejected her before everyone, and guilt burned inside him like fire. He imagined what life would have been like if he had married her. She would have helped him with the farm, respected his mother, and shared his struggles. But now she was gone, not gone from the world but far beyond his reach. The next morning Kwame walked to the market. There he saw Amma standing beside her sacks of cocoa beans, speaking politely to traders. She looked strong and content, wearing a simple wrapper and a bright headscarf. People greeted her with smiles and respect. Kwame wanted to go to her, but shame held him back. He watched from afar as she laughed gently and helped a young boy lift a bag of beans. For a moment he felt tears gather in his eyes. He turned away quickly and walked home with heavy steps. Days turned into weeks. Kwame tried to rebuild his farm, but it was hard. Most of his land had dried up and his savings were gone. He began working on other people's farms just to survive. Many who once admired him now pitied him. Each time he passed Amma's shop, he felt a mix of pain and admiration. She had become what he once dreamed to be, successful, respected, and at peace. And she had done it without pride, without showing off, and without hurting anyone. Kwame finally understood the truth his mother had tried to teach him. Pride can lift a man high for a moment, but it can also make his fall harder. He realized too late that he had traded gold for glitter. As the sun set one evening, he sat by the river, the same river where Amma once cried, and whispered, "If only I had listened. If only I had known." The wind moved gently through the cocoa trees, carrying his words away, just as time had carried Amma beyond his reach. Many years passed and time changed everything. The man who once walked proudly through the village was now a shadow of himself. Kwame had grown thin and weak. His cocoa farm, once full of green life, now stood empty and dry. The trees bore no fruit, and his house was quiet, almost forgotten by everyone. His mother, Nana Abina, had passed away peacefully 2 years before, leaving him truly alone in the world. Life had not been kind to him since Ife left. He tried to rebuild, but luck refused to follow him. He borrowed money to start again, but the rains came late that year and his crops failed. His friends who once admired him in his rich days now crossed the road when they saw him. He became the man everyone pitied, the one who had lost everything because of pride. Kwame spent most days sitting under the big tree near his broken house. He would stare at the red soil and wonder how things went wrong so fast. He remembered his mother's words, "A woman who cannot live with patience will destroy a man's peace." He remembered Amma's calm face the day he rejected her and how she had walked away with quiet strength. Those memories became thorns in his heart. One morning Kwame woke up with a fever. His body burned and his head felt heavy. He had no money for medicine, no food in the house, and no one to care for him. He lay on his mat, whispering weakly, "Maybe this is how I will end." 3 days passed and his condition grew worse. Then one afternoon a knock came at his door. It was a young boy from the market carrying a small basket. Inside were some cooked yam, palm nut soup, and a few packets of medicine. "Who sent this?" Kwame asked faintly. The boy shook his head. "A woman gave it to me and said it was for you. She didn't want me to say her name." Kwame frowned in confusion but thanked the boy with a weak smile. The food smelled warm and comforting. He ate slowly, his body trembling with hunger. For the first time in many days he slept peacefully. The next morning the boy came again with more food, fresh bread, groundnut soup, and a note that read simply, "Be strong. Better days can still come." There was no name, but the handwriting looked familiar. It was neat and soft, the same kind of writing he remembered from Amma's old letters long ago when they were still friends in childhood. Kwame's eyes filled with tears. He knew it had to be her. He whispered to himself, "Even after all I did, she still remembers me." He felt shame but also something else, hope. That day he decided to try again. He began to sweep his compound, clean the roof, and repair the broken fence. It was not much, but it gave him purpose. He wanted to live, if not for himself, then to show that he had learned. Weeks passed and he started to feel stronger. He went to the market to sell a few cocoa seedlings he had managed to grow. The market was full of noise, women calling out prices, children laughing, traders arguing. It was the same place where he once walked proudly beside Ify. Now he came with a small basket and quiet eyes. As he walked past the stalls, a familiar voice caught his attention. It was calm but firm, filled with warmth and confidence. He turned and saw Amma. She stood behind a table covered with bags of cocoa beans, bottles of chocolate oil, and boxes of soap made from cocoa butter. Her stall was the biggest in the market. People crowded around, buying and greeting her with respect. She wore a simple blue dress and a bright yellow headscarf. Her smile lit up her face and her eyes shone with peace. Kwame froze. For a moment he could not move. He felt as if time itself had stopped. He remembered the young woman he had rejected, shy, quiet, and heartbroken. But this Amma was different. She looked strong, successful, and full of dignity. Amma noticed him standing there. Their eyes met, and for a moment, everything went silent. Kwame's heart pounded in his chest. He wanted to speak, to say sorry, to explain everything. But his throat felt dry and no words came out. Amma looked at him kindly. There was no anger in her face, only calm understanding. She gave a small nod, the kind one gives to an old friend, and then turned back to serve her customers. Kwame lowered his head. Shame washed over him like a wave. He turned away slowly and walked to a quiet corner of the market. He sat down and watched her from afar. He saw how she treated everyone, with respect, patience, and fairness. When an old woman couldn't pay full price, Amma smiled and said, "Take it, mama. Pay me next week." When a young girl dropped her basket, Amma helped her pick it up. Kwame realized that her beauty was never in her clothes or her looks. It was in her heart, in the way she carried herself, in her kindness. He whispered softly, "She was always gold. I was too blind to see it." Later that evening, as the market closed, Amma sent a small boy to Kwame with another basket, this time filled with fruits and bread. There was a folded note inside. It read, "You don't have to thank me. I only did what I would do for any man in need. Life is too short for hate." Kwame held the note for a long time. His eyes became wet again. He wanted to run after her, to tell her how sorry he was, but something stopped him. He felt he didn't deserve her forgiveness. That night, Kwame walked home under the moonlight. The air was cool and the stars shone brightly. He looked up at the sky and whispered, "God, I don't deserve her kindness, but please bless her for it." He sat by the fire and thought of his life, the pride that destroyed him, the choices that led him to emptiness, and the quiet grace of the woman he once rejected. For the first time in many years, his heart felt light, not because he was happy but because he had finally learned humility. In the days that followed, Kwame began helping others in small ways. He fixed fences for neighbors, carried goods for old people, and offered his farm knowledge to young farmers. People slowly began to speak kindly of him again. They said, "Kwame has changed. His heart is softer now." And though Amma and Kwame rarely spoke, each time they met at the market, she would greet him politely, and he would bow his head in respect. He no longer saw her as the girl he rejected. He saw her as a blessing he never deserved, a reminder of what true goodness looks like. As time went on, Kwame learned to live quietly and gratefully. He found peace in simple things, a sunrise, a shared smile, a helping hand. He knew he could never undo the past, but he could live in a way that honored what he had learned. Every evening, he looked across the hills toward Amma's home and whispered a silent prayer for her happiness. And even though she never said it out loud, Amma also prayed for him, that he would continue to heal and find peace. And in that quiet understanding between two hearts, forgiveness lived, not spoken but deeply felt. The morning sun rose gently over the village of Ahenkro, lighting up the cocoa fields like gold. Birds sang and the air carried the smell of ripe fruit. Kwame walked slowly down the red dirt road, holding a small basket of oranges. His steps were unsure, his hands trembling slightly. He was going to Amma's office, a place he had avoided for years. He had spent many nights thinking about it, asking himself if he was brave enough to face her. After all the pain he had caused, after all the mistakes he had made, he wondered if she would even want to see him. But he knew that this moment had to come. His heart would never rest until he told her how sorry he was. Amma's cocoa company was now one of the biggest in the region. Her building stood tall, painted white, with a small wooden sign that read Amma's Gold Cocoa Limited. Many people worked there, women sorting beans, men loading sacks, and children helping with small tasks. Everyone greeted her with smiles when she passed. She was respected not only for her success but also for her kindness. Kwame stopped at the gate, took a deep breath, and greeted the guard. "Good morning. I would like to see Madame Amma." The guard looked at him and nodded. "Wait here. I will tell her." Minutes later, the guard returned with a smile. "She said you can come in." Kwame's heart began to beat faster. He walked slowly toward the office door and knocked softly. "Come in," Amma's calm voice answered. He opened the door. She was sitting at her desk, writing something in a notebook. She looked up and smiled gently when she saw him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was heavy, filled with memories: the day under the mango tree, the rejection, the pain, the years of distance. Kwame lowered his head. "Amma," he said quietly, "I did not come here to disturb you. I came to say sorry, from my heart." Amma set her pen down and looked at him carefully. "You don't need to be afraid, Kwame. You can speak freely." He took a deep breath. "Amma, I was blind. I thought I was better than everyone because I had lived in the city. I thought I knew what was good for me. But I was a fool. You were the blessing I threw away." His voice broke slightly. "You were the one who would have stood by me when everything fell apart. And I hurt you deeply." Amma listened quietly, her eyes soft but steady. Kwame continued, "I lost everything: my farm, my wife, my pride. I thought I could rise without humility, but I was wrong. I came today not to ask for anything but to say thank you. Thank you for helping me when I was sick, even when I did not deserve it." The room fell silent again. The sound of birds outside filled the space between them. Amma finally stood and walked to the window. "Kwame," she said softly, "life teaches us in strange ways. Some lessons cannot be told, they must be lived." She turned to him and smiled gently. "I forgave you long ago. Holding on to anger would only have stopped me from moving forward. I learned to let go because peace is more important than pride." Kwame looked at her, his eyes wet with tears. "You are stronger than I ever knew. I don't deserve your kindness." Amma walked back to her desk, picked up a folder, and handed it to him. "This is for you," she said. He looked at it, confused. Inside were a few papers, a small employment form and a schedule. "I have a new storage project in the next village," she explained. "We need someone to supervise the workers and help manage the cocoa drying process. I know you have experience. If you want, you can work with us." Kwame's eyes widened. "You want me to work for you?" Amma smiled. "Not for me, with me. Everyone deserves another chance, Kwame. You've changed and I can see that." Kwame could hardly speak. His hands shook as he held the papers. "Amma, after everything I did, you still choose to help me?" She nodded. "Mercy is not weakness. I help you because it is right, not because I forgot what happened. But I believe people can change when they are truly sorry." Kwame bowed his head. "You are a good woman. May God bless you for this." She smiled again. "Just work hard and do your best. That will be enough." He left the office that day with a lighter heart. The sun felt warmer, the air fresher. For the first time in many years, he smiled without shame. He felt like a man who had been given back his life. Over the next few weeks, Kwame worked hard at the new site. He arrived early every morning, sweeping, organizing tools, and guiding the younger workers. He was humble and respectful, never raising his voice. Everyone liked him, and people began to say, "Kwame has truly changed." Amma visited the site often. She would greet the workers kindly, ask about their families, and bring food to share. Whenever she spoke to Kwame, her voice was calm and professional, but there was also a quiet warmth in her tone. She never reminded him of the past, and he never tried to reopen old wounds. They both understood that forgiveness was not about forgetting, it was about moving forward. One afternoon, while they were checking the drying racks, Amma turned to him and said, "You know, Kwame, I used to think pain was a curse. But now I see it differently. Pain can be a teacher if you listen." Kwame nodded slowly. "Yes," he said, "and I was a hard student. But I have learned." They both laughed softly, not the laughter of old friends, but the laughter of two people who had survived something heavy and come out wiser. As time went on, the worksite flourished. The new storage facility was completed on time and became one of the best in the region. Amma praised Kwame in front of everyone during the opening ceremony. "This project," she said proudly, "was built with teamwork, effort, and second chances. Sometimes life gives us people who once hurt us, not to punish us, but to test if we have truly learned forgiveness." The crowd clapped and Kwame stood among them, smiling humbly. He felt no embarrassment, only gratitude. He knew that every word she spoke was true. After the ceremony, Amma walked up to him and said quietly, "You did well, Kwame." He smiled. "You gave me a chance. I only used it." She nodded. "And that's how life should be, one chance leading to another." That night, as Kwame walked home, he looked up at the stars and whispered, "Thank you, Amma." He wasn't just thanking her for the job or the forgiveness. He was thanking her for reminding him that kindness is more powerful than pride, and that the heart that forgives shines brighter than any gold. He knew he could never change the past, but from that day forward, he promised himself he would live differently, with humility, gratitude, and peace. And even though their paths had once broken apart, they now ran side by side again, not as lovers, but as two souls who had learned that mercy can heal what pride once destroyed. Years passed and the village of Ahenkro began to change. New roads were built, young men started small farms, and more women joined Amma's company to work and learn. The once quiet village became a place of hope and growth. But among all the changes, one thing remained the same: the respect everyone had for Amma and the quiet humility of Kwame, who worked faithfully by her side. Kwame had rebuilt his life from the ground up. Every day he came to work early, wearing his old hat and carrying his small lunchbox. He no longer cared for luxury or fancy clothes. What mattered most to him was peace, the peace that came from doing the right thing. He worked with focus and kindness, helping younger workers and teaching them the best ways to care for cocoa beans. He never raised his voice or acted with pride again. Instead, when people made mistakes, he would gently say, "It's all right. Learn from it. I once made a mistake too, and it almost cost me everything." The younger men respected him deeply. They often gathered around him during lunch breaks, listening to his simple words of wisdom. Sometimes he would smile and share stories about his past, not to gain pity but to teach. "Never reject gold because it doesn't shine yet," he told them often. "When I was young, I thought beauty meant value. But true worth, my brothers, comes from the heart. If someone has a good heart, hold them close. You may not see their light now, but one day, it will shine so bright you'll regret ever walking away." The young men nodded, some even writing his words down. They had seen with their own eyes what regret could do to a man, and what humility could rebuild. Amma, on the other hand, grew to become one of the most respected women in the region. She started new programs to help widows and single mothers, teaching them how to grow and sell cocoa. She gave scholarships to children who couldn't afford school and supported small farmers by providing fair prices for their products. Her name became known far beyond Ahenkro. People from other villages came to learn from her, calling her Mother Amma, not just because of her success, but because of her gentle spirit and wisdom. One afternoon, a journalist came from the city to interview her for a magazine. The journalist asked many questions about her journey, how she built her business, how she faced challenges, and what kept her strong. Amma answered each question humbly, always giving credit to the people who worked with her. But when the journalist asked, "What was the hardest lesson you ever learned?" Amma paused for a moment, then smiled softly. "The hardest lesson," she said, "was learning to forgive when I had every reason not to. Forgiveness doesn't erase the pain, but it allows you to move forward without carrying bitterness. I once forgave someone who broke my heart, and in that forgiveness I found peace and purpose." When the story was published, many people were touched by her words. They admired her strength, but they didn't know that the man she forgave was the same one who now worked quietly outside her window, Kwame. Kwame didn't seek attention. He didn't want people to praise him or remind him of his past. He found joy in his work and in seeing others succeed. He often said, "A man's true strength is not in how much he owns, but in how much peace he carries in his heart." One day, Amma called for a village meeting under the big mango tree where everything had started years ago, the same place where Kwame had once rejected her. The whole village came, men, women, children, and elders. Amma stood before them, her voice calm but full of power. "My brothers and sisters," she said, "we have come far as a people. We have learned that unity brings strength and forgiveness brings peace. I want to thank everyone who has worked with me, and I want to honor someone who showed true change, Someone who taught us that it's never too late to start again. She turned and looked at Kwame. Kwame, she said, smiling warmly, you showed that regret can lead to wisdom and wisdom can build life again. Your story has become a lesson to many and for that I thank you. The crowd clapped and cheered. Some people even had tears in their eyes. Kwame stood frozen, his heart full of emotion. He had never expected public praise, especially from Amma. He bowed deeply, unable to speak. When the noise settled, he finally said, Amma, you gave me a second chance when I had lost everything, even my dignity. I will never forget that. And if my story teaches anyone something, then I am grateful. Amma nodded gently. That is how life should be, we learn, we fall, we rise again. After the meeting, the villagers sat under the tree talking about how life had changed for everyone. The elders whispered to each other, Kwame has become a new man. Amma's forgiveness has given him back his life. Over the years, Kwame continued to work for Amma's company, eventually becoming a supervisor and mentor for new workers. He never married again, but he found peace in helping others build their dreams. Sometimes when young women came to Amma's office to seek advice, she would smile and tell them, remember, your worth is not in your looks or wealth. It is in your heart and how you treat others. And when young men came to Kwame for guidance, he would repeat the same words that had become his life's lesson. Never reject gold because it doesn't shine yet. The saying spread throughout Ahankro. It was painted on school walls and written on the gates of Amma's company. Even children recited it as a proverb. Years later, when Kwame grew old, people still came to visit him, seeking advice. He would sit outside his small house, surrounded by cocoa trees, and smile as he watched the young farmers pass by. He often told them, work with your hands but live with your heart. Pride will take everything from you but humility will give it all back. Amma sometimes visited him too. They would sit together, sharing stories about the past and laughing softly about how life had turned out. There was no bitterness between them, only peace, the kind that comes when two people finally understand life's true meaning. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Kwame looked at Amma and said, do you remember the day I rejected you before the elders? Amma smiled gently. Yes, Kwame. I remember. He sighed. That was the worst day of my life but also the day that led me to learn who I really was. I lost you but I found wisdom. Maybe that was God's plan. Amma nodded. Sometimes pain is the only road to wisdom. They sat in silence, watching the orange sky fade into night. The sound of crickets filled the air, and a cool breeze passed through the cocoa trees. In that quiet moment, Kwame finally felt free. His heart was light, his soul at peace. He had lived through pride, loss, regret, and forgiveness, and he had come out whole. In the village of Ahankro, people continued to tell their story for generations. Parents told it to their children, teachers told it in classrooms, and elders shared it during gatherings. They would always end the story with one simple truth, that true worth lies not in beauty, wealth, or fame, but in the heart that stays kind, humble, and forgiving. And so, Kwame and Amma's story became a timeless reminder that even a heart once broken can become a light for others.